UFC 300 days away now at this stage. If you're tuning into this one and you want to hear us talk about the prelims, say no more, fam. We got you covered. Go to the video a couple of days ago. We cover the prelims from top to bottom. We're focusing on the UFC 300 main card. Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill is the main event. Light heavyweight championship on the line, the strawweight championship on the line in the co-main event, the BMF title on the line, as well as other interesting fights on this card. Let's get into it, boys. No straight in, no kissing, as the lad says. Very wild there. Sorry, guys, got a bit excited there, but yeah, Yuri. Hey, I get like that. Alex Pereira is fighting Team O'Neill. Member, love the man, love watching him fight. He scares the absolute bejesus out of me. So anybody like that, I'm always intrigued to see. He comes in against Jamal Hill, a confident Jamal Hill coming into this one. We'll see how much that confidence pays off in the main event in the 205 division. Harry, your immediate thoughts on this as a fight? Maybe let's concentrate on the storyline coming into it more so than the actual fight itself from the get-go.
It's monumental, really, isn't it? Like, if you're Alex Pereira, you've gone and you've had a meteoric rise at middleweight. You've had the fantastic feud with Israel Adesanya, and then you come on up light heavyweight, probably a far easier weight class for you to make in terms of the weight cutting and everything else, maintenance of weight and whatever. And then you go out and you win the title. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. In the short career that he has had, an absolutely insane run to get where he is. Jamal Hill, same. Seán Sheehan saw Jamal Hill, UFC debut, called it there and then and said he's a future champion. Seany podcast was correct. And so Jamal Hill sort of said in his recent interviews, look, I won that title and I had my life planned out in front of me, right? Like, the light heavyweight division wasn't what it was when I came into it. I saw lots of winnable fights there for me. And then the Achilles blows. Fine, no problem. For Jamal Hill, I think, forget the UFC 100 stage for a second, but he was told by the UFC, go heal up. You will get the immediate title shot when you come back. I don't know if I would like the immediate title shot against fucking Alex Pereira if I was coming back from that sort of injury. But I don't really want to fight Alex Pereira, even if I had a full camp and you paid me 10 million quid. You know what I mean?
I wouldn't want to fight him if I was wearing a full suit of armor, to be honest, to tell you the truth. He'd still probably get at me some way. He's a scary individual. But maybe to piggyback off what you were saying, Harry, it's like, okay, yeah, you're guaranteed the immediate title shot, but I don't think that this fight fell into place the way the UFC wanted it to fall into place, the way maybe Jamal Hill wanted it to fall into place. I think Alex Pereira was happy to take these kind of fights. I think, this fight kind of is a result of UFC scrambling to pick up a main event. And I would imagine that, there would have been a big suitcase full of money delivered onto Jamal Hill's front doorstep, maybe with a brand new contract extension as well on top of that, to kind of maybe push forward his preparation and his recovery coming into this fight with Alex Pereira. And I mean, with Alex Pereira, I think it's important that we talk about his story, which, I'm guilty of, and I don't think is talked about enough. In the course of 11 fights, double UFC champion, beaten multiple other UFC champions. The man was not even involved in combat sports when UFC 100 was taking place, only then stepped into kickboxing, then progressed to mixed martial arts. And, it's a question that I've asked myself, Seany, time and time again. And, maybe I'll ask you, you can go down whatever way you want, is that why don't we talk and celebrate Alex Pereira and his story as much as we do? I want to mainly label it down to maybe the pure shock of it all. Like, I don't think we're going to truly appreciate what he's done or what he's doing in this sport until it's probably all said and done.
Well, do you know what? That's a great question for a speaker's corner, to be honest.
It is, yeah. Give me the watered down version, and then tune into the Patreon, and we can discuss it in more detail.
My initial thought here is, right, that's a wider sporting problem here and the way the sport is covered. Like, you always hear Josh Gross talking about it, that a sport that doesn't remember its history, like doesn't know its history and doesn't know what things actually mean. And I remember, so I was sat down after one of his one of his big fights, maybe his last fight or the fight before it, and someone asked me a question on the Q&A. I think it was my guy Christopher Graham, and he said he's headlined 2 Madison Square Gardens. He's won a middleweight championship in his 6th fight or whatever it was, and now the light heavyweight champion as well. This guy's a double champion, massive headlining card. Now he's headlining UFC 300 as well, and he's the same amount of fights as James Sheehan, less. You know, mad. And I think the problem with that is we don't understand how historically amazing that is, right? If someone had done that early in the UFC, okay, no problem, because people had very few fights. Even if someone came in, say like a Brock Lesnar, and did it, right? Okay, but still, you know, we're in the mid days of MMA, and this unbelievable person from one sport coming to and maybe take people apart that are maybe not as good, as well-rounded MMA fighters. But Pereira came in and did it in 2022, 2023, 2024 against guys who are high-level, top-grade MMA fighters. And okay, he fought Izzy, who is primarily a kickboxer, but you know, we've seen how well of a mixed martial artist he has become. We know how well of a mixed martial artist Jan Blachowicz is, and Jiří Procházka, as well as Sean Strickland, who he beat in the middle of that. And I think that's the biggest problem. I think it needs, and I've tried to do it. I've sat down on the podcast and gone, this is why he's amazing. We need to appreciate this guy more. Even on the award show at the end of the year, he didn't win the fighter of the year. I made a point of saying it, that this guy is a historic fighter. He's one, like, if he goes on and loses these next 5 fights in a row and he'd retired or whatever, he should still go down. We had a little bit of this chat about Ronda Rousey as well last week. Still go down as a historic fighter for what he's done, because he's done it so quickly and achieved so much. It's absolutely unbelievable what he has done. And I don't think it can be stated enough. There'll always be people who talk it down and give you reasons why it isn't amazing.
That's what I was going to say. Like, I think overall that we tend to see in mixed martial arts, there's a level of depreciation that comes against fighters like this. And we've seen it time and time again, where it's a what have you done for me lately kind of a sport, where, you know, people don't truly know the history, like you said as well. And just the way modern society has gone was in more so, you know, they want to pick at, you know, holes in somebody's achievements. We dealt with it, you know, as Irish MMA fans and Irish MMA media with Conor the whole way throughout his career. There was excuses after excuses after excuses trying to disparage or depreciate the rise that he had. We're seeing it similar with Alex. We're seeing it. You know what? I think I might have been guilty of it myself a little bit with Israel Adesanya as well. If I'm being truly honest, and we're talking about this, I think with Israel, look, we all called him a fantastic fighter, a lot more critical on some level of his performances, all right. But in hindsight, when you look back at what he did over the course of that 5-year run, it was pretty phenomenal. But yeah, things like this, and rather than celebrate people like this, it always kind of leads down to that level of depreciation, doesn't it?
Just one stat in Bahia before you throw it over to Harry. This will be his 12th fight this weekend. 6 UFC champions he fought in those 12 fights. That is crazy. Like, that is absolutely crazy.
Insane. Sometimes you just have to look at the cold, hard facts on paper, and that will give you the kind of platform that you should be using to kind of talk about a fighter as well. You know, what are your thoughts on what we've been discussing, Harry? And before we get into the technical analysis a bit, with the fears that we are kind of creeping into Speaker's Corner territory, maybe you can still chalk it down for a further chit chat some other time. But curious to hear your thoughts about all this.
I mean, sure. Look, it sounds like this is an Ian O'Neill Speaker's Corner episode, and sure, we should probably get you in for that. But yeah, look, I mean, I completely agree that Bahia is sort of underappreciated, undervalued, and I think a lot of that is because there is purism in MMA in a lot of ways, right? And an element of purism is that people are still waiting for the failure. They're still waiting to see him go out and be demonstrably outgrappled. They're still waiting for MMA to win. And it's not going to, right? People are waiting on the MMA to go out and defeat Alex Pereira, the pseudo kickboxer, now supposed MMA fighter. They can't believe that somebody can go out and look as wholeheartedly dominant against career-long MMA fighters as Alex Pereira does. They just can't fathom it. And so they sit there, and it is impossible to understand the nuances of the striking game of Alex Pereira, the range games, the feint games of Alex Pereira, because that level of striking just doesn't exist in MMA until now. And when MMA, as in and of itself, is faced with somebody like Alex Pereira, you notice how people are just saying, well, all you need to do is take him down. Sherlock, why has nobody done that already? 6 UFC champions he's fought in 12 fights. And so a lot of the depreciation comes from the fact that people don't know what they are looking at. And that, I think, is well and fine and to be expected, but that's exactly why Seán Sheehan is correct, in that he is a complete historical figure, because without Alex Pereira, MMA is not exposed to the level of striking that it has been exposed to with Alex Pereira.
And
just one thing as well. Yeah. Jamal Hill has actually been a bit of the same stuff.
Yeah.
I remember, like, it's funny because, you know, I predicted he'd become champion as well. And I saw someone replying and going, like, they gave like 4 reasons for why Jamal Hill wasn't the real champion type of thing. And it's weird because, like, we look at, say, Rory McDonald. He is the perfect MMA fighter who is going to be champion. He never became it, you know, and have we ever had one who has actually become it yet? We haven't. We're still waiting for that. And that's, you know, we talk about in Speaker's Corner all the time. But, like, it's funny. It's funny you make that point, Harry, that, like, we're still shocked when people become it, but it just takes something to click and something special to hit for you to become that. And funnily enough, we have 2 guys who have done that over the last 4 or 5 years here.
100%. And I think overall, if you want to define what a great fighter is, it's going to come with that level of depreciation. You go back all the way to GSP when he was beating all the top level competition. He's a boring fighter. You know what I mean? And you look at, in some ways you could kind of understand people not understanding the grappling side of things or not appreciating that. I think what's baffling to me is that you got an absolute killer on the feet here that wants to go out there, keep it on the feet and knock motherfuckers out or debilitate them with calf kicks, and people are still not happy. And, you know, I said, not today on the Severe setup. I wanted to give him his flowers, and I think we did a good job of that as well. But now we got to get into the nitty gritty. Now we got to get into the fight, Harry. And I think, you know, the level of analysis on this, we kind of gave ourselves a little bit of a preview in our WhatsApp group for picks and what we were kind of thinking coming in here. And I'm just going to simplify it, and you can get more technical if you want. To be coming in and fighting a guy of Alex Pereira's style, coming off one of the most serious injuries of your career, and that serious injury being an Achilles injury, what you depend on quite an awful lot for a lot of things in this fight, at least, and in all fights, really, if you're dependent on an Achilles heels. You're coming in here with one of the biggest calf kickers, one of the most dangerous calf kickers, and one of the most devastating calf kickers that he's ever faced in Alex Pereira. It does not bode too well on paper for Jamal Hill coming into this fight, Harry.
I think if Jamal Hill's style was more about footwork, more about feints, more about sort of your fundamental principles of kickboxing, then I would say it is less of a factor, because he could make adjustments that would draw Alex Pereira into either throwing less calf kicks or missing more calf kicks. And so I think Pereira is smart enough that if he's missing shots, if he realizes that shots aren't available, he's just not going to put too much effort into them, right? He'll just change and adapt and begin to change the approach and change the arsenal. With Jamal Hill, he is a very athletic, very lungy type fighter, in that he dives into space, throws that long left hand, long right hand in order to cover the distance. Those lunges are going to allow Alex Pereira to turn to one side, rotate the upper core of his body, and to sweep out the leg of Jamal Hill. Now, whether that happens when Jamal Hill is landing heavy on that front foot from a lunge, whether it's when John Mahal Hill is landing heavy as he pivots, as he naturally does when he's in his cadence and footwork patterns. But it just, the moment that this fight got announced, my immediate reaction was, well, that's the Achilles gone again. Like, that is the Achilles gone again.
Yeah,
and if
100%.
not, he takes the other one first and then he puts the other one to bed. Like, I'm not saying that John Mahal Hill can't cover distance massively quickly and knock Alex Pereira out. We've seen Alex Pereira put to bed. We've seen him finished. We know John Mahal Hill has big power. We know that he's tough. We know that he can take shots. But a pre-existing injury coming in with a level of striker like Alex Pereira is a problem, and a problem that John Mahal Hill would not want to have to solve in his game planning, but it is a problem he is going to have to solve in his game planning.
It's a recipe for disaster, in my opinion, to be honest, because with Alex Pereira and when we're talking calf kicks in general, we always say, you know, it could take one. But it's very rare that we actually see a fighter go out there and be able to achieve such devastation with one kick. We've seen it with Alex Pereira. We've seen the look on people's faces when he's landed that calf kick. And the one that's fresh in the mind is from his last fight with Yuri Prochazka. You watch that fight back and that first exchange, boom, calf kick. And you can see Yuri reset straight away. He's like, oh my God, this is different gravy. And that's what you're facing with Johnny when you come in against Alex Pereira. It's like, you know, you have to be able to check him, yeah, number one, but you have to be able to read to see where they're coming to check him. And he disguises them so well. And when they do land, like I said, all it takes is one, and it almost turns your life upside down.
100%. And you've made that point very well. So I'm going to make two adjacent points to that, right? Preparation. Like, this is a very... Oh, geez, I said on the podcast this weekend, I hate seeing Achilles injuries. They're rotten. Like, they're rotten. Like, how much does it take you to come back from that, to just to walk or just to run or just to be able to get your cardio in or get your training back? Like, imagine the first time someone goes for a fucking heel hook and training, or you're in jiu-jitsu and you turn your ankle sideways or what. Like, all of that has to be overcome so you can properly prepare. Look, we've all seen him at events where he's been massively blown up in weight, and it wasn't that long ago. It's not as if he's getting fucking 15 or 20 weeks of preparation for this. Like, if he has, you know, and okay, I'm sure he prepared, right? But is it enough for a fight like this? The second thing I would add to it as well is, right, how back to 100% is his movement, right? I'm sure he was back to 100% to prepare. Maybe, like, if he would have liked to have been 12 weeks out or 8 weeks out, maybe he had 6, maybe he had 5 or something like that. But how are you going to move, right? And there's 2 points I'll make about this, right? From an offensive and defensive point of view, if he can't move away defensively from that left hook that's coming in, he is fucked. Ask Sean Strickland all about that. Big problems. And his own strikes that he comes in with, he throws a kind of a similar kind of left hook inside that lands as well, which is about speed, which is about kind of getting off of that calf, or shooting off with your feet, using your muscles. I just, if it is a factor, right, and maybe it won't be, maybe we have it wrong, and maybe he's 100%. Oh God, it could be a massive factor, as well as, you know, the calf kick which he talked about. Well, imagine the 3 of those things are like completely against him. He is in a world of trouble there. But if they're not, right, just maybe not the devil's advocate, but from his point of view, he has big power. He is an unbelievably good athlete. He can do things that Alex Pereira does as well. Maybe not as technically well, or maybe not as proficient as Pereira does, but he can actually match him in a way that I think the vast majority of other fighters can't. So he's not without a chance, but I agree wholeheartedly about this injury. It's just, you said a recipe for disaster, and I think you're 100% right.
Shawnee, can I ask you about Hill's mentality coming in this, and his outspokenness about this fight, and his level of confidence coming in here? What does that tell you about him? Obviously, he's a confident individual. He's believed in himself. He done the interview with Severe years and years ago, and, you know, he had that chip on his shoulder even back then, you know, only after 1 or 2 wins in the UFC. He's coming in here with outrageous claims, you know, saying that he's going to absolutely destroy Pereira on the feet. And, you know, a lot of people are laughing at him. But do you think that, you know, he has the mentality that likes to build that level of pressure on himself? Because, you know, pressure creates diamonds. Some people perform excellently under that extra bit of pressure as well. What do you kind of see as his mentality coming in here and why he's being so outspoken?
To me, what is, and I haven't seen all of it now, as people know, I kind of stay away from a lot of that stuff, but I've seen bits and pieces, and what you mentioned there about him saying he's going to beat Pereira.
You flat out said this is going to be an easy fight, one of the easiest of my career. That's what he's saying.
I think he's trying to convince himself. And that's not to say that he doesn't believe it, right? But a lot of people need to say things to convince themselves to then go out and actually do it. Right, so he might do it. He very well might do it. Like, he definitely has a chance. But that would be my reading it. I don't know if you agree or not, but I think
I would agree, and I think every fighter would be guilty of doing that. But it's to the level that you do it, I think, is the difference here, where it's almost bordering on the line of being disrespectful over all the achievements that Alex Pereira has had, and that can have a double negative effect. To be honest, I mean, you know, it can have a negative effect when it's not going your way in the fight, early days, but it also can maybe provide Alex Pereira with some fuel to the fire that he already does have to go out there and prove a guy like Jamal Hill very, very wrong in what he's been saying over the last number of weeks. What are your thoughts on everything like around that, Harry, before we move on to the co-main event?
I completely agree with Shawnee. It feels like posturing to me. It feels like Jamal Hill knows that he's not had enough time to recover properly. He knows that this hasn't been the best of camps. It hasn't been the best of years for him. And he is facing a guy who is by far the stiffest, sternest test in this division for him. That's one of the reasons he's the champion, obviously. And it feels to me as though we're watching Fighter Delusion in real time, where he's saying, easiest match of my career, forget it. Like, what are you talking about? If Jamal Hill, and I think there's another wrinkle here, which is the grappling. Like, Jamal Hill can grapple, has had far more exposure to grappling in his overarching MMA career than Alex Pereira has had. But we don't really see Jamal Hill use it, right? We see him use it defensively and not offensively. And that's, again, not to say that he can't use it offensively. There is undoubtedly that he is in that training room and he is shooting takedowns in his training. But will he use it? Can you use it when the pressure is on and the lights are on and the world title is on the line and it's sat there cage side and you've got to pull it out the bag and you're reduced down, as we always say, reduced down to the foundations of your being? And is a takedown there for Jamal Hill? I don't think it is. And so
it's having the capabilities to take the fight down as well, Harry. Whereas that, you know, you need two very good working legs to be able to kind of take a fighter down sometimes as well. And you know, will the damage already have been done by the time he wants to try and close the distance and take the fight down there? I mean, that is the obvious route to victory for me, for Jamal Hill. Very, very curious to see if he can practice what he preaches heading into this main event with Alex Pereira. I'm very looking forward to that fight. The UFC Strawweight Championship is on the line, as I said, in the co-main event. Zhang Weili versus Yan Xiaonan. Harry, your thoughts on this? I think, you know, if we're talking about appreciating fighters, I think, you know, based off previous performances, Zhang Weili is probably the best women's fighter out there in the UFC and in the world mixed martial arts right now. And whilst this fight might not, you know, live up to a lot of people's desire in terms of maybe hype and everything like that, I think, you know, this is a good chance for Zhang Weili to get a good test by her fellow countrywoman, but also to showcase the level of abilities that she does have inside the octagon as well.
I think Zhang Weili might be the most complete fighter that we've had in female mixed martial arts, right? Like her, and I mean that in terms of her ability to fight in the front foot, her ability to fight on the back foot, her ability to grapple, her ability to scramble, and the athleticism and the power on top of that, right? She has almost every single facet that you would want from the MMA game. She has it. Now, of course, you know, there are things that she isn't so skilled in. There are things with which she is not quite to the level that she will want to be. She's employed Josh Hinger, who's ADCC medalist and just a fantastic grappler all around, to have her in her last 2 or 3 camps, I believe, to focus specifically on the MMA style of grappling and looking at submissions, using submissions and integrating those submissions into her game. And so I think against Rose Namajunas, we saw that in the second fight, obviously. We saw that ad nauseum where she was using grappling, both really lovely passing on top and in the scramble abilities to ensure she stayed on top position and ensure she gave Rose a tough time in those scrambles. And we know that Rose is a great grappler as well. I just feel like in this specific fight, we are going to, and again, I think actually the element that we touch on with Zhang Weili is the same as Alex Pereira, is because she's so well-rounded, because she can do everything so flawlessly and so seamlessly and transition so well between the facets of MMA, it's very difficult for us to understand. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's very easy to understand Drew Dober. It's very, very easy to understand him. Very easy. It's very easy to understand Dan Hooker. It's very easy to understand, insert fighter that goes in and has mad wars, Benoit Saint-Denis, Dustin Poirier. It's very easy, not Dustin Poirier, but it's easier to understand these fighters in comparison to a, Demetrius Johnson that we've talked about before, a GSP that we've talked about, and now a Zhang Weili, right? They are very, very, very difficult, complex, nuanced fighters to try to understand. I think for Yan Xiaonan, she had a career best performance in her last outing, and she looked absolutely fantastic in the outing before that against Mackenzie Dern. And I think this, though, is a very, 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 very different kettle of gravy, where Zhang Weili is just as quick. She's far more powerful than Yan Xiaonan. And I also think that the grappling diversity is something that Yan Xiaonan is going to have to pay far, far more attention than she did in the Mackenzie Dern fight. We have seen before that when Mackenzie Dern grapples, the way in which she gets into space is she either dips her head, throws massive overhands, and just tries to find a way inside, or she'll pull guard, she'll jump guard, she'll do these sorts of things. Zhang Weili is not doing that. She's blast doubling you, she's hitting uchimatas, she's hitting haragoshis, she's hitting these sorts of things in order to get reactions to then chain grapple. And I think this is a very, very tough fight for Yan Xiaonan.
I think with Zhang Weili, there's kind of 2 different fighters that we've seen in the UFC. And I think the example of the 2 fighters are exactly what we've seen in the first Joanna Jędrzejczyk fight and the second one. And that in between those 2 fights were 2 losses to Rose Namajunas. Obviously, Zhang Weili lost early in her. I think it was her first MMA fight, actually, of her career. Didn't taste defeat for many, many years as well. So, went on a tremendous run. And, we talk about it time and time again, Shawnee, what those losses can do for a fighter and when they have to go back to the drawing board. And that's what Zhang Weili did. And we've seen a more polished, well-rounded style fighter ever since those 2 losses. And it's kind of like Zhang Weili 2.0. Would you agree with that assessment, number one? And do you think that there's anything that Yan Xiaonan can kind of come in and do to cause any trouble here to Zhang Weili?
I think what she can do? She can be a good technical fighter and she can be a powerful fighter, right? And in a matchup like this, where and I'll get into it here in a second, I don't think she has the advantage in any area. Just look, the only thing you can do is do what you're good at and hope it works. I think, it's funny. You look at someone's record, right? And you mentioned she actually lost to Mangbo in her debut, who's a very good fighter over at One Championship at the moment, but it's obviously a long time ago. So look, the 2 lost in her career to Rose Namajunas. And why did she lose to Rose? Okay, the first one she landed the big head kick and it was early, so you can kind of write that off. But the second fight, I think it's just because Rose is as good, if not better, of an athlete than her. And it's very rare that someone like Zhang Weili will find someone who's a better athlete than him. And that's the case for almost every athlete in MMA or in combat sports anyway. If you're like the apex athlete, it's very, 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 very unusual you will ever meet anyone like you ever again, right? So is Yan Xiaonan that? No, she's not. She's definitely not that. So I think I was interested to hear Harry say that Zhang Weili is going to be more powerful than her, because I think you're probably right. I was kind of undecided on that. She's not the most powerful in the world, but she is powerful. But I made the point in the podcast as well, and I'm glad Harry made it, because I think it's 100% right that the fight will be relatively even, but with Zhang Weili probably ahead until she changes up and goes to grapple. I think there'll be a trip probably in the 4th minute or maybe the 2nd round, and the fight just changes from then. The one where, oh, could this go either way? That no, it's going one way, and she goes on and she wins, 4 rounds to 1 or something like that. I really think that. Now, if that doesn't happen, I think she'll probably still win anyway. But I do. You see sometimes the champions. I mentioned it with Valentina Shevchenko. They make it easy on themselves. A little bit of a takedown in a close fight where you can get on top. You have the better of it there. I think that can be a huge advantage. Fight IQ, and I think that is what Zhang Weili shall do in this one.
Yeah, I think we're probably going to get a taste of how this fight is going to go late stages of round 1, like you said, Shawnee. And it's like with Zhang Weili, you get taken down, you don't get back up. She's excellent in top position, excellent with her damage, excellent with her position, with her movement, gives no space, allows no kind of positional advantage to any fighter that she has on the bottom. Excellent in that position. And to me, without, I'm not going to be able to say this without sounding super disrespectful to Xiaonan, but I mean, how long this fight goes is how long she decides this fight goes. How tough she's going to be able to, how much of a beat down maybe she's going to be able to take if the fight hits the ground. Now, if Zhang Weili gets a little bit brazen and tries to fight this on the feet, we will see maybe a little bit of a different fight. But like Shawnee said, I'd still have confidence in the champion to get the job done in that. We'll move on, lads, to talk about the next couple of fights. And the next one up, Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway. Sweet baby Jesus, an unbelievable fight for the BMF title. A fight, this one and the next one, that I am really, really jumping over and back on, what my opinion on how this fight will go and who's going to win. How way can I kind of break this down? And I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on it as well. You've got a Mack truck in Justin Gaethje looking to try and throw unholy bombs, and you've got Max Holloway in I'm useless at cards. So let's say a Nissan Skyline that, will kind of stay chipping away and will eventually, kind of get the better of maybe the big, I can't even remember the first car. I should not have went with a car analogy here because I'm not a car guy. But look at Justin, I'm gonna do it in the way I know how to do it best, and that's talk fights. Justin Gaethje is going to go out here and try to absolutely brutalize Max Holloway with strikes. And it's going to be Max Holloway's job to try and, weather some kind of an early storm, be effective with his striking, be effective with his footwork, and try and weather that storm and get this fight to the later stages where I feel he might be a little bit more successful. I'll go to you first, Harry, to get your assessment on this fight as well and where you're leaning and what your thoughts are on how this one might play out.
I'm worried for Max Holloway. I am worried for Max Holloway. Look, the first stint at 155 pounds was not a stint at 155 pounds. It was just Max saying, sure, look, I'll take a fight at 155 pounds and I'll just eat a little bit more food and I won't step in the weights gym any more than I usually do. And I'll just, have an easier weight cut, essentially. That's not going to fly here. And I think he has taken this far more seriously. It certainly looks from the training footage that he's released, and it certainly looks like from the photos that he's released on his Instagram, that he is a lot larger, a lot more filled out in his frame. And so I suspect that he will carry some of that size and physical advantage up to 155 pounds. But Justin Gaethje isn't a small 155-pounder. Justin Gaethje hits very, very, very hard. And if we talk about this from a stylistic perspective and also from sort of a career trajectory perspective, Max Holloway has been in the UFC since he was 19 years old. Max Holloway has been in some absolute wars in his UFC career. And Hawaiian chin or not, there comes a time when that thing starts to fail. We have seen the Bisping interview and the issues that were raised coming out of that specific performance. We look at Max Holloway in and of his last couple of fights, and the one that really screams out to me is Yair Rodriguez. There was a moment in either the late second or the early third where the damage just got too much for Max Holloway, and so he decided to do the right thing, which was to grapple for fear of potentially getting rocked, stopped, and hurt in that specific fight. And I look at this coming in here, Justin Gaethje hits way, way fucking harder than Yair Rodriguez does. And I also think the third point to this, and I will make this the last point, is the leg kicks of Justin Gaethje. We have seen Max Holloway take leg kicks off Alexander Volkanovski. We have seen the damage that they did in those specific fights. Now, okay, this is 3 rounds, not 5 rounds. And so I understand that that's a variable as well. But Max Holloway is somebody that likes to push forward. Justin Gaethje will. It's 5 rounds. Yeah, of course.
Five fights, yeah.
Five fives, of course. Yeah, forget that variable. Like, Max is somebody that wants to push forward. Justin Gaethje is somebody that is happy to allow Max to push forward and just stand in there and be a fucking fire hydrant. I think if Max Holloway chooses to try and mix in some grappling here, it is a way, way, way more even fight because we know of the issues that Justin Gaethje has in the jiu-jitsu on the ground. But Willie, that's my question.
And that's my question too. And like, to be honest, I'm mainly of that opinion that you just described there, Harry, but more so over the last number of days when I've really been trying to think about this fight, I've been allowing myself to see Max Holloway get the win or finding a way to get the win as well. But, you know, it really, really is to me going to depend on the first 2 rounds here and how much impactful strikes that Justin Gaethje gets off. Can he get off that calf kick? Can he get off the leg kick? Can Max Holloway close the distance and try and take him down? Because that is the smart route to kind of get to Justin Gaethje. Where is he going to be at his most dangerous? Well, in the first 5 or 10 minutes is where he's at. Well, he ain't going to be dangerous, and we've seen him not being dangerous in the first 10 minutes when he's been on his back, when he's been grappling. You know, Charles Oliveira did it. A couple of others have done it as well. And, you know, fighting smart and fighting to be entertaining has been things that we've talked about with fighters before. And I think that's a real case with Max Holloway and the route for him to be successful and to be crowned the BMF title champion, I should say, in this fight. Shawnee, what do you kind of think, and what's your assessment on how this one might play out?
I don't know.
It's quite hard, isn't it? It's so tough. Like,
I have a feeling, right, both of them are going to come out and try to fight a very technical game. Gaethje has been fighting that way, you know, give or take a fight or two for the last few years. He's been fighting a way more technical manner. Holloway normally does with a bit thrown in like Gaethje, but I feel like we're going to get to a point, right? Unless, and like Gaethje is very dangerous early as well, and I could get caught with something. Unless someone is caught with something early, where we get to like a 3rd round, and the 2 of these lads are like, nah, fuck that, and they just go for it. And that's my kind of hope, and it's also kind of my prediction. I feel like they're just gonna go balls to the wall and go for it. I feel like for Holloway, like if you're to predict Holloway was going to win this fight, how is he going to win it? I think you probably say he's going to win a decision. Yeah. Maybe as Harry said, get the fight to the ground. I agree. And Gaethje, it's analysis that I've done before. He's not great on the ground, but I don't know if he's going to be. He's a good wrestler. Like, he's just bad jiu-jitsu. I don't think Holloway's going to be able to get him to the ground. I don't think he's going to knock him out unless he gets very tired. But we know how good Gaethje's chin is. Then is Holloway's chin going to be as good? The thing as well, I'll make kind of a counterpoint to Harry's point as well, and I agree with his point about Holloway. Holloway's 32. He's a lot of miles on the road. But Gaethje's 35, and he has just as many miles on the road. So could it be the case that like the last bit of that chin is gone, and if Holloway hits him, he could put him over? There are a lot of variables in this fight. Look,
and Gaethje gets hit too, man. I mean, you look at that Chandler fight. Chandler landed on him a couple of times and had him wobbled a couple of times as well.
He was getting hit in the World Series of Fighting. Let's not forget that. He's had a lot of damage on that chin against lads who aren't as good as the lads he's been fighting recently even.
Yeah, and it's like, for me with Holloway here, I think for the first time, I think truly in Max Holloway's career in the last number of years, he kind of has a little bit more a sense of meaning and purpose and what this fight may mean, you know. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that he wouldn't love to be the featherweight champion again, but he's been there, and obviously he's gone to the dance a couple of times with Alexander Volkanovski, and I was calling for him to move up to the lightweight division for many years, kind of give him that fresh spark and that fresh motivation to come out here. And I think that's what excites me most about seeing him in this fight, because he's been allowed the proper amount of time to kind of get himself up to an acceptable, maybe, size and weight for 155 pounds. I don't think we got to see that against Dustin Poirier, to be honest, because the fight came a little bit too soon for him in that case. Max Holloway also is a guy that loves kind of proving people wrong. And, look, he's wanting to prove us wrong and going out there and beating Alex Volkanovski. But, who would we, I know MMA Mats is terrible to go to, but like Alexander Volkanovski in certain ways to me, I would think would do very well against a guy like Justin Gaethje. And I think if Max Holloway does not get drawn into Justin Gaethje's style and he uses, I agree what you were saying, Shawnee. I think Max Holloway has the capability to use his grappling, but not to finish, but more so to frustrate and take Justin Gaethje off of his game. What will, close the distance and taking the guy down do if you want to stand and bang? It'll frustrate you. What happens when you're frustrated? Well, when you get back up to the feet, you start overcommitting on shots. You start worrying about that takedown again, and your whole game gets turned on its head.
And tired too.
Yeah, and I want to say that Max Holloway is an intelligent enough fighter to go out there and implement that game plan. What do you want? What do you need? I'm trying to put myself in Max Holloway's shoes here. What do you need to prove at this stage in your career? You've been to wars. You've proven that you're tough. Now just go out there and win a fucking fight. And I don't think anybody is going to go out there and complain if he does decide to go in and take him.
They definitely will. This is for the fucking stupidest, gimmicky, wankiest title on the fucking roster. But you're talking about you could be talking about a win against Justin Gaethje could set you up for a lightweight title shot as well. Doesn't fucking matter. If Max Holloway goes out there and takes Justin Gaethje down, Twitter will be a fucking blaze with hatred for Max Holloway.
I don't think so either, because he can do it at the start, but I'm not saying that he needs to do it throughout the course of 5 rounds, but you do it at Justin Gaethje when he's at his most dangerous. Then you have Justin Gaethje playing kind of catch up for the rest of the fight, which also takes him out of his game plan. Now, look, I'm not banking that he does it either. I think the likelihood of what we're seeing is that we're going to see Max try and do it on the feet. But, if a big leg kick lands, if a big shot lands that hurts Max Holloway, he's probably going to have to look at changing it up. And if he doesn't, he might be put out of there. And I think that's kind of the way that you're thinking about this fight, Harry, is that, his ego might get him in a little bit of trouble in this one. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that not even necessarily the ego. I think the weight of the BMF title has, it's a little bit like the Lord of the Rings ring, right? You just want to put it on, and the weight around your neck and whatever. But
I'm not even paying too much dividends in the fact that this is for the BMF. Fine. I'm just seeing this as a fucking great lightweight fight that's 5 rounds because of a gimmick title. Hopefully the two of them are getting paid more for fighting in it. But I do also think that this can be a gateway to get, up towards a title shot as well. And I know for sure Justin Gaethje is looking at it as that. I know for sure that if Justin Gaethje wins this fight, he's going to be calling for Islam Makhachev. And if he's going to be doing that, why shouldn't Max Holloway be doing the same thing either if he manages to go out there and get the win? So
I hear what you're saying, but these two fighters have been put in this fight with this wanky title for a reason. And I just feel like both of them, and I'm desperate to be proved wrong. I am desperate to be proved wrong. But I feel like both of these fighters feel like they have a specific assignment in this fight. And both of these fighters, if we take, again, as we said before, if we reduce these fighters down to the foundations and the fibers of their beings, Max Holloway is the last 15 seconds against Ricardo Lamas, and Justin Gaethje is World Series of Fighting. Like, that is who they are at the foundations of their fiber of their beings. And I just feel like you put these title wankfests together in order to get that sort of a fight. Now, I would love, and I completely agree with you, that if Holloway goes out and he does try to grapple, he just try to frustrate Justin Gaethje, he absolutely has the skill set to win. Absolutely. I just feel like he won't. And I fear that this is the first of, I don't know. Yeah. If he doesn't, there is a significant beating coming Max Holloway's way, a significant beating. And he may even win the attrition battle. We may look at something similar to fights we've seen before from him, but the damage he is going to take in this fight is going to be demonstrable. I don't want to see this, and it won't, I hope, but I don't want to see this turn into Justin Gaethje, Tony Ferguson in the Apex.
Yeah, that would certainly be, and I hope it doesn't get that far as well. Any final thoughts on this to wrap it up, Shawnee, before we move on?
With all that has been said there, I think Gaethje's going to beat him bad. I just think he's going to have too much power. He's good cardio. The big, I think a massive thing for Gaethje here is I don't think Max has the power to test his chin that, say, a guy like a Poirier or an Oliveira or a Chandler does. And that means he can be even more, not reckless, but he can throw more along with his technical confidence. Yeah. It's a tough matchup for Holloway, all right. But look, Holloway is well able for it, but I think Gaethje will win.
Yeah, I think overall, I probably, and that's why I hate giving my picks, because I always do the preview show and change my mind on picks. But I have been zigzagging over and back on this. Maybe more so, if I'm being honest, searching for a way for Max Holloway to get the win rather than being convinced that he's going to do it. But it'll be interesting. We'll find out. We'll be talking about it next week anyway. Another fight that I'm very topsy-turvy on is another fantastic fight, really, lads, in the lightweight division. Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan. Brilliant. Look, a big fan of Tsaurukyan ever since his UFC debut. His rise up the rankings. Super, super tough test here in Charles Oliveira, coming off his win over Beneil Dariush. Your thoughts on this one, Shawnee?
I'll tell you the first thing I'll tell you on this one, right? I have this guy who messages me maybe once a month, maybe during these big cards, and he's a real smart bettor. I think he won 80 grand last time, and he asked me what do I think. I'm betting Tsaurukyan, and I'll take that for what it's worth. But I watched a bit after that again of both of them, and it's a fucking tough fight to call. The biggest issue coming into Tsaurukyan's last fight, right? The bit of analysis I did on it was, Jesus, he's very good, but does he have enough power to make it pay, right? And that was against Beneil Dariush. And what did he do? He knocked him out after 64 seconds or whatever. Now, Beneil Dariush, not the best chin in the world, as we all know, but Tsaurukyan kind of proves something in that, I think. The biggest issue for Tsaurukyan, okay, what is Tsaurukyan? A really good grappler, a really good wrestler with very good technical striking. Again, maybe not the most powerful striker in the world, but as we saw, 64-second knockout last time speaks for itself. But you're fighting Charles Oliveira. What's the number one rule against Charles Oliveira? Don't fucking take him down or he'll submit you, right? Now, Islam Makhachev was good enough to do it because he's such an unbelievable grappler. He had no problem with it. Is Tsaurukyan that good? I think we'll see, right? On the feet, I'll just do it on the feet part. On the feet, I think Tsaurukyan is definitely a better technical striker than him, but Oliveira doesn't give a shit about that. His MO is to go out and throw big strikes that if he gets taken down, he's happy enough to fight you on the ground, and if he doesn't, he'll catch you with something big and knock you out. That is almost harder for someone like Tsaurukyan, I think, to gain an advantage on, to win over 5 rounds. Is it 5 rounds or 3 rounds? It's 3 rounds. Is it maybe 3 rounds? But it is 3 rounds, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But the ground part, Harry, go on. What were you going to say about the ground part?
He's definitely good enough to not get submitted. He's definitely good enough. Over and back, straight grappling, MMA grappling beats jiu-jitsu. And I think that Charles Oliveira certainly can do, right? Certainly can do a bit of the MMA grappling, but a lot of it is still jiu-jitsu centric, right? He's looking to use leg locks to expose back attacks. He uses X guards. He uses De La Rivas. He uses traditional sort of shin pin passes. He uses tripod passes when he's getting to mount and the back. And then obviously the arm bars and the rear naked chokes and everything else, blah, blah, blah. All of that's grand. There is just a different style of grappler. When MMA guys come down to the gym and you roll with them, you realize that it is an entirely different philosophy to grappling. It's an entirely different approach to grappling than if you're playing more of more elements of a sport jiu-jitsu type style, leg locks, X guards, these types of things, that it's just so hard to get that stuff going. It's so hard to find the space. The MMA grappling is about wrestling. It's wrestling from the bottom. It is consistently not being on your back. It is consistently squeezing the space from your opponent. And if you are on bottom, it's consistently about finding underhooks, using underhooks, and scrambling back to your feet. It's about heisting. It's about these sorts of things. Jiu-jitsu is just not that. Like, sport jiu-jitsu is just not the same thing. The application of those things are just not the same in their processes. I think what we saw in the debut against Islam Makhachev is that he can run with a guy like Islam Makhachev. He was beaten well, right? Like, it wasn't a contentious fight at all, but you saw glimmers there that, oh, he can do this, and he could do this very, very well. He then goes out and he fights Joel Alvarez, and we see what happens there. He comes in, and don't get me wrong, Charles Oliveira's submission ability and his overarching jiu-jitsu is absolutely fantastic. But they are going to be different looks here. They are going to be different looks. I think the really interesting thing is what happens if Charles Oliveira is able to settle into a rhythm of grappling, and whether Tsaurukyan is not able to force scrambles and to be able to negotiate those scrambles, as I think he is. Then it starts to get really, really, really interesting.
When it comes to the grappling as well, Harry, it's like, it's not about whether he can simply submit him or not, but we've seen it against Tony Ferguson. Now, I'm not trying to compare, obviously, Tony Ferguson was against Charles Oliveira. I don't think he was the same level of fighter what Arman Tsaurukyan is coming in here. We don't necessarily have to, but if Charles Oliveira gets his back early, locks in a body triangle, you know what I mean, and controls around over 2 or 3 minutes, and lands a couple of strikes and elbows and goes for an attack, that can be enough to get you over the line here as well. I would imagine as well that Charles Oliveira might fancy himself a little bit better on the feet, more impactful strikes, longer, rangier, can kind of stay out of the kind of lungy hook style of Arman Tsaurukyan. I'm a real tizzy in this because, I've been championing Arman Tsaurukyan for the longest time. I'm very wary of, like I said earlier on in this podcast, or maybe it was the last one, not letting my heart choose over my head. And I've picked Charles Oliveira to win a decision here. And I've based it off the fact of what Sean said, is that I don't think we truly know the true level that Tsaurukyan is at right now. But this is a fight that we are going to find out. So I've chosen to go based off what we've seen already from both of these fighters. But that might be simply down to the fact that we've just not had the chance to see Tsaurukyan at his absolute best, or the level that he's currently at right now. And you know what? If there was one fight I'd be happy to be wrong about, it would be definitely this one, because I can be right in both ways. Even if Charles wins, I'm right in predicting the fight. If Tsaurukyan wins, he's on one way route of, maybe possibly fighting Islam for the title in a little bit as well. And I don't know. I see Charles win into striking exchanges. I see some heavy kind of scrambles in this, that I believe that, Charles is very, very savvy and tricky, where he has the ability to turn nothing into something in these scrambles. And it's not, landing major damage. It's not locking in a submission. It's sometimes about just securing that position and keeping that position and maintaining that position whilst you're landing little bits of damage, which might be enough to take this fight overall. Any thoughts, anybody?
Yeah, I don't know that I see Oliveira winning the striking either. Like, I think Tsaurukyan is a southpaw, and so that makes it slightly more difficult immediately, because that's not a conventional style that you're looking to prepare for. Now, there may be, and I'm just going to throw this out there,
southpaw to a straight right hand, though. Charles loves it.
Sure. But I bet you Ian Gary has given Charles Oliveira some lovely little tips on how to fight southpaws, or the things that you can offer, or these sorts of things. I love the Tsaurukyan left body kick, but he has to be careful with it in this fight. You don't want to be getting that kick caught. And I know that's conventional and we don't see it too much in MMA anymore, but I wouldn't want to be seeing Charles Oliveira catching a kick and running him down, because if Charles Oliveira gets to the back of Arman Tsaurukyan gets a couple of hooks, I can absolutely see him doing exactly what you've just said, Ian. You take the back, you lock the body triangle down for a couple of minutes, landed some shots, couple of elbows. You're like, oh, look, I'm choking his face. Look. It's all points, right? It's all points. It's all control time. It's all submission offense. I think Tsaurukyan is the better athlete. I think his footwork is slightly better too. I think Oliveira has a lovely teep down the middle, and the right hand is absolutely demonstrably just an absolute game changer. But I just, again, maybe because I've not seen Tsaurukyan fight the elite of the elite recently, I maybe am pandering too much to the skill set that I have seen against the people that he has shown it, shown it so far. But I just think finishing him on the ground is going to be hard. Getting to his back and holding him there is going to be hard. I get that Charles Oliveira has more power on the feet, but Charles Oliveira also gets cracked. And it's not like Arman Shukun is without power. You know what I mean? He could certainly crack himself. And I just, I don't know. It's a
great fight. It's a great fight. It's a great fight. And, yeah, I'm still, I could be changing my mind over and back on this. I'm still leaning on a Charles kind of, I think there's going to be big moments in this fight. And I think he's going to probably have the savviness and the veteran kind of experience to kind of maybe find himself in the better positions when those moments happen. And I think we saw kind of a glimpse of that when Arman Tsaurukyan was in there against Islam as well, to be honest, is that, he put up a great fight, but Islam was just, obviously that was a different fighter back then. It was many fights ago as well, but, being in these kind of high level fights is something that's not that different to Charles Oliveira. And now we're going to find out whether Tsaurukyan can do it consistently. And I'm very excited to see that one. Last but not least, let's talk about Bo Nickel versus Cody Brundage in the middleweight division. Shawnee, any thoughts on this one? Look at we chose not to go too negative here, but I think UFC are reaching for the stars a little bit by putting Bo Nickel on pay-per-view. You have Kayla Harrison on the undercard. You have the likes of Cody Garbrandt and Davison Figueiredo, amongst other fights here that might have seen Jiri Prochazka and Rakic as well, which we all talked about previously. Your thoughts on this fight, the placement, everything?
Yeah, I think the placement is... this fight probably shouldn't have been on this card, if we're being honest. Now, I understand they want to make Bo Nickel a star and everything like that, but if you want to do that, give him a bigger name, give him someone else. But anyway, we'll leave that.
My argument to that, my argument for that as well is that we fucking saw John Jones on the UFC 100 card. He was second from bottom with similar enough experience to what Bo Nickel here. I think UFC are banking a little bit on too much on what they think the star that Bo Nickel could become, rather than just focusing on what he is right now. And that's just an up-and-coming fighter with a lot of questions around his name and his style and him as a fighter, to be honest.
That's true. Although he is a good fighter. Just on Brundage, maybe, to start off. I went through about 5 of his fights, and it took me until the 5th one to find prolonged striking, which is not a good sign. Going into a fight with Bo Nickel, it just really can't be. He loves starting the grappling exchanges and losing them. Again, not a great sign. We're going in there against a world level wrestler like Bo Nickel. On his striking, though, do you know what he's really good at? He's really good at breaking from a wrestling exchange and landing a big strike. There was one fight he was in a wrestling exchange, kind of a grappling exchange, a clinch exchange, I'd say, in the middle of the cage. He kind of backed off. He broke from his opponent, and he came out and he just hit him with a straight right directly down the middle. Then they broke again, and he hit him with a lovely left hook. And he's not a great striker. He has like this bouncing up and down style where he tries to just like throw big hooks and throw big shots. But he's actually, it's weird. He's weirdly good at landing them off the break. Now, the problem is, if he gets close to Bo Nickel, there probably won't be any breaks. And Bo is just going to destroy him in the clinch, in the grappling, on the ground. Bo is also a way better striker than him from what I have seen. Dangerous, powerful, no doubt about it, but Bo Nickel should walk through him here and get it done whatever way he wants to get it done, I think.
Is it going to be a KO? Is it going to be a submission, in the first round? That's the kind of what everyone is going to be thinking here. I think the KO is the one to go. What are you thinking about this one, Harry?
I don't really give a shit, is what I'm thinking, to be honest. Like, they have rolled up Bo Nickel on a red carpet, start a main card. They'll chat loads of breeze about him being a fucking brilliant wrestler. And then Cody Brundage will walk out, get whacked, and then fine. What did we learn? Fuck all. Like, fair play. What it will do is it will rouse the crowd, and people will love to see it, and it'll be a lovely way to kick off the main card in terms of the sort of stimulus for the rest of the card. But I mean, yeah,
Might get a couple of USA chants on the go, maybe. USA. And yeah, that's it, guys. That wraps us up. A full-on coverage this week of UFC 300 main card. Like I said at the start, if you want to hear about the prelims, we did one a couple of days ago. You can check that out on Patreon, on the YouTube channel as well. Enjoy the fights. Don't be out there bitching about this card. Go out there and enjoy the fights. Enjoy the fights, everybody. And we'll be back next week to break them all down. Sean will be on McGraham on the big podcast on Sunday, Monday, whenever you catch that. Harry and I will be back for the breakdown next week to break this card down from top to tail. We'll talk to you then at BJJ_Harry Powell, at Seán Sheehan BA, at Iron and Neil MMA.